The first big thing that I see is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's podcast. They sign a multi-year licensing deal worth more than $100 million with Spotify. That means a lot of different things. That means a lot of different things at the moment. The first thing is that the melding between traditional and non-traditional is is just exploding and expanding. What I mean by that is we have an audio format which is old, but the new version of it is raw, uncut, and what we see as podcasts, and how people are able to not have to spin music and be validated by these networks and companies, and follow by their rules, and not be and not be able to completely speak the way that they wanted to speak um, beforehand. So now it's a totally different experience that we're getting. So we see now Spotify replacing the companies that were putting regulations on their performers into now being the company that's really just more about solving the problem that was that. Why was radio dying? All these regulations, people were not able to completely relate to what they're hearing on the radio, whether it be the music, whether it be the personalities, because there was this ban of you being able to completely be yourself, time wise, how you speak wise. We're seeing people now through podcasting being able to speak any kind of way, put out anything that they want. So now we see Spotify providing a home for people. Even YouTube beforehand, if you remember, in like 2009-ish, YouTube would ban certain things from being able to be seen on their platform, and then they loosen it up a little bit, and it seems like it's kind of going back in that same direction, but not in the same way. Like maybe the algorithm won't show people your stuff the same way that it would if somebody was making family-friendly content. So now we see Spotify, the big goose, offering Joe Rogan $100 million or more, and I'm assuming a lot of that is going to come with bonuses and things that are going to come on the back end. So why is this significant? Last year, I'm sorry, 2 years ago, Spotify offers Joe Budden, the other Joe, I don't know how much. Speculation says that it's about $3 million. 3 million, let's call it 3 million for 3 years for his podcast, which shot up to be number one on the platform. And I think that for them, it was to gauge the value of podcasting. What I thought was interesting is that they put it on their platform for free. They put it on there for free. Because attention is valuable. I don't have to sell you anything to make a lot of money off of you. That's deep. So they do a multi-year licensing deal. It's worth more than $100 million. And we have another operative word here, which is licensing. Joe Rogan doesn't have to, number one, change his show at all. And number two, he gets to keep his show. Spotify, I think, saw the value in Joe Budden and said, okay, cool. Off this $3 million, I probably made 10. Speculation. I don't know. I'm making the numbers up. But so podcasting is valuable, but it's never about the product. It's never about the product. It's always about a relationship. There's millions, I'm assuming, millions of podcasts out there. This essentially being one of them. But the relationship that Joe has with his audience is powerful. It's impactful. It's something that will go anywhere that Joe goes. So they're assuming that with this $100 million plus deal, they don't need to invest in marketing the show because they bought an all-in-one thing. They bought something that's already solidified with the people that follow it. So that's amazing. It's downloaded. The Joe Rogan Experience is downloaded almost 200 million times per month. Last year, he made $30 million. The show, not Joe, but the show, made him the highest podcaster of 2019. Highest paid. What does that mean for other podcasters? There's something I find that's interesting is that, yeah, I think people like Joe Rogan, but he also has relationships, great relationships with people that allow him to bring on these high-profile, interesting people that people want to hear from and allow him to sit across from them on his show. Spotify's paying for that. It's interesting that they're paying for this during a global pandemic when a lot of companies are not making any money. So, something that I have to ask is I've seen a lot of congratulations for Joe. I've seen a lot of people excited for him because, let's be honest, this $100 million is not $100 million. It's probably $100 million right now or $100 million and some change right now. But as the subscriber base, as the eyeballs for Spotify grow, which Spotify is already number one, as it grows, as it outpaces the next, you have to assume that he's gonna be making more money. So let's call it $300 million. In 3 years from now, he could pack up his stuff and say, "Yeah, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm out." And he leaves with X amount of dollars. Spotify doesn't need to own it because out of $300 million that we're assuming he's gonna make, they're probably going to make $500 million, if not more. And then they have a relationship built with these incoming people who are downloading Spotify to listen to Joe Rogan speak. They have a relationship with them as now they're trying to edge themselves out of their competition of being the go-to platform for podcasts and I guess vlogcasts or whatever they're calling it, because Joe's gonna put his videos on the Spotify streaming platform. So they're going video. And I've been seeing I have Apple Music. I don't have Spotify. But I've been seeing that Apple Music has been trying to get into the video game. I don't know how successful that has been. I've only watched videos on my music streaming platform if they have an exclusivity thing happening. So, where's everybody attacking Joe Rogan for making this much money for sitting and talking to people? Because we saw a lot of that for Jeff Bezos. Let's remove the fact that for Jeff Bezos, who's slated to be a trillionaire by 2026, Let's remove the fact that maybe he, let's say, uses sweatshops. I don't know. I don't know for sure. Or that he underpays people or he exploits them, which I have an interesting relationship with the word exploitation. I think on the surface it sounds bad, but it's the nature of everything. And it could be used for a positive purpose. But I don't know if that's a conversation that we all want to have at the moment. But why isn't anybody saying that Joe Rogan shouldn't make $100 million? Nobody should make $100 million, because that's what I saw on Twitter when Rest in Peace Capitalism was trending. Hey, nobody should be worth $1 trillion. Tweeting from my iPhone. FedEx driver dropping off my Amazon boxes. I think the thing about business is nobody really values the risks that people take and how much people lose over X amount of time. And then when they're winning and they've provided opportunity for themselves and for other people, however many amount of people, once you're there, people just think that, well, I mean, clearly you just got there. You had a great relationship with a billionaire, and they gave you their money, and you figured it out. That's not always the case, man. It's not always the case, and a lot of people feel like most people who are wealthy or who have the money that maybe they desire to have was just born into it. But if you look at the numbers, let's type it into Google. How many people born millionaires? %21 of people who are rich. 21% of people who are born rich or born into rich families inherited their money. That means about 80%, 79% of millionaires or people that you deem to be successful made it on their own by sacrifice, by risking it all, only for them to make it to where so many people aspire to be and say, hey, it's not fair, dude. It's not fair. They solved a problem that somebody else couldn't, and they say it's not fair. So either way, shout out to Joe Rogan. I think that's amazing. I don't know what bar that sets for podcasters. Spotify is pretty much like YouTube a little bit. I believe that there's an upload button on Spotify, and you could just upload your stuff there. So that goes back to me saying that your product is never that important. Whatever it is that you're selling, it's never that important. The problem that you're solving is always at the top and the most important aspect of business. What I mean by that is clearly there was a need for this figure, this Joe Rogan figure. Clearly there was a need for that. And he provided a solution for people's problems, whether they realized that they had that problem or not, but he provided a solution for it. And now he's being paid because $30 million says, here's the solution that I solved. And it's by creating these, I'm not going to say unbreakable, but these very strong, powerful relationships with the people that are listening and the team of people that he decided to work with. So to that I say, congratulations, because so many people in business think that the product is so important. Imagine if Apple thought that the product was so important. They'd fail. Because it's not. Ultimately, the innovation that people expect from a company like Apple, they have that trust that, hey, you're Apple. You're not going to give me new technology that sort of works, that's ahead of the game like Samsung. Samsung might be ahead of the game and give you technology that works 70% of the time. But Apple's going to just see what you do with that, perfect it, and make sure it works 99% of the time, and then give it to you then. So they have that trust with their consumers to say it's not about the product. It's about the fact that you hold my hand and I hold yours. We have a good relationship with one another. And Samsung does the same thing too. That's not to say, because I have a Samsung phone and I have an Apple computer. And I personally, I can't say what's better, but I think that the relationship I have with Samsung is, next year we're going to try crazy stuff. Will it work all the time? Probably not. But the 10 out of 100 times that it does work is going to blow your mind. I like that. So, shout out to Joe Rogan. For other podcasters, does this mean? Well, it does. It does mean that we have to step our game up. Does that mean that we have to have Elon Musk on an episode? No. But I think that we, as podcasters, as creators, we get stuck into the fact that we're creating a podcast. Creating a podcast is the last thing that we're doing. We're solving somebody's problem. If you think about it in the sense of somebody who's creating a business, we're solving somebody's problem. So for me, if you're into business and you, like, a problem that I have is I don't have adequate people around me at all times that I can talk about the things that I like in detail. And maybe I can share in the way that I think without being like judged or anything. And I know I'm putting it on the internet, so I'm going to get judged. But I like to talk about business, and I like to talk about it in an open sense and not in an emotional sense, but I like to be analytical about what I'm seeing. So that's what I have to say on Joe Rogan. I asked a question on Twitter to say, if he didn't license the show, how much would he have gotten if he sold it to Spotify? I'm seeing the numbers around 500 million. But I don't think so. At first, I thought that the number was a little high, but now I don't think so. Because if you really think about it, you sell your company 10 times the value, so they say, because you're expecting, that's how much you're expecting you would have made in the following 10 years. And then you add the fact that, hey, for the past 5 years, we've been doing better in revenue. We've had incremental growth every year. We do 10 to 15% better than the year before. So you have to factor that in. So if he's making 30 million in 2019, you have to imagine that maybe he's doing 40 this year. 2020, no Spotify deal. So would it be worth it to Joe Rogan to sell his entity, to sell his property for $500 million? Probably not, because in 10 years, we can imagine that it would make more than that. That's the math in my head. All right. Joe Rogan. Amazon. First trillionaire. I also don't know. Like, I've seen a lot of emotional people speak on the fact that he shouldn't be we're moving topics.